Welcome to another episode of Street Smarts. I'm Spyros.
And I'm Manolis.
And today we're going to talk about the most influential photographers that defined street photography up to the year 2000.
Yeah, let's go. So before we start our list, we need to say that the first ever photographer, the first ever street photo that was captured was from Daguerr, a man signing his shoe, as we have already mentioned in our first episode. And from then...
Yeah, and from then on, photography became more easy. It were more convenient. Cameras were lighter to carry. And we're going to start by looking at photographers from the early 1920s that defined the genre and that influenced everyone that are taking photos up to today. Okay, let's go back to the roots. The early 20th century, when street photography was still forming its identity, right? This was a period of discovery, a period of experimentation, and it was kind of shaping the future of what photography was going to be like. So let's start with the first photographer, who's extremely important.
Yeah. And he literally shaped all the other photographers after him. Hello, Milo.
Yeah, let's go. André Kertész, mostly active from the 1920s to the 1960s. So we're going to start with Hungarian-born André Kertész, eventually settling in Paris and later in New York. He was a lyrical force in photography. Kertész captured the subtle, often quiet moments that felt poetic. His use of shadow, reflection and geometry was years ahead of his time. He didn't chase the spectacular, he elevated the everyday. His sensitivity helped define the emotional language of street photography.
After him, Henri Cartier-Bresson, mostly active from the 1930s to the 1970s. He hailed as the father of modern street photography. He wasn't just a photographer, he was a philosopher with a camera. His concept of the decisive moment shaped generations. He believed in capturing life as it unfolded, without manipulation. With a Leica in hand and a sharp compositional eye, he gave street photography its most famous principle.
Yeah, the defining, the decisive moment. It is indeed the most famous principle.
And he was always shooting with a 50mm lens, black and white, and he never changed. He wasn't cropping, he wasn't...
he was very much against cropping.
Yeah, and he was against cropping.
Yeah, and when he sent his photos into magazines and to various publications, he insisted that they show the frame lines.
Exactly.
So it would prove that his photos weren't cropped.
Yeah.
Robert Capa, mostly active from the 30s to the 50s. Capa went where it hurt. Spain, China, D-Day, Indochina. He chased conflict not for glory, but for humanity. His street was the front line. He got close, dangerously close, because that's where emotion lived. His photos don't flinch. There's motion, grit, and risk in every frame. Capa believed if your pictures weren't good enough, you weren't close enough. And he lived by that, right to the end. He was bold, brave, and tragically human. And he was the first war photographer. He was a pioneer in his own way because he inspired so many photographers after him to do similar things. Let's move on to Walker Evans, who was mostly active from the 1930s to the 1960s. So Evans might be known primarily for his documentary work during the Great Depression. But let's be clear, his influence on street photography is huge. He photographed American life with a detached, clinical eye that made the ordinary seem profound. His subway portraits taken secretly in New York are timeless, raw, unfiltered, and deeply human.
And on that period, don't forget Brassaï, that gave us the magic night. Paris under the street lamp. He wasn't interested in the bourgeois beauty. He photographed lovers in alleyways, drunks in bar, shadows on cobblestones. His work is romantic, dark, and unapologetically human. It blurred the line between street photography and fine art, and it showed how mood can become subject.
Dorothea Lange, she was mostly active from the 30s to the 50s. She was a storyteller with her lens. Though most known for her Depression-era portraiture, her approach was deeply street-rooted. She worked in public with people, documenting pain, resilience, and survival. Lange didn't just photograph, she bore witness. Her influence lies in how street photography can carry social weight, not just aesthetic value. And this is very interesting because, and we should talk about this extensively in one of our next videos. Something that's talked about a lot lately is how street photography is turning into just visual puns with no meaning. Street photography has no social weight anymore. It's just more of a
every period has
fun, humorous thing. But this is a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that small interjection for our listeners.
Yeah. In the same period, Lisette Model brought confrontation to the frame. She photographed society's extremes, grotesque, flamboyant, powerful. Her work was raw, often uncomfortable. She got close, both literally and psychologically. Her teaching legacy is huge too. We should say that she mentored Diane Arbus. Model was about truth, even if it was ugly or awkward. And that's pure street.
Moving on, Helen Levitt, mostly active from the 30s to the 80s. Levitt was a master of visual poetry. She captured the playful energy of kids on the streets of New York, especially in Harlem. Her images feel timeless, gestures, chalk drawings, movement. She had a gentle eye, and you can sense her respect for her subjects. Later, her pioneering color work added a whole new dimension to her legacy.
Robert Doisneau gave us a whimsy. He turned Paris into a playground. His images often carry humor, a glance, a kiss, a misstep, but they are never mocking. He captured warmth, community, and love in street life. Even his most famous stage image, The Kiss, speaks to something real and universal. A street photographer with a smile in his frame.
Willy Ronis, mostly active from the 40s to the 80s. Ronis was part of the great French humanist tradition. He celebrated working class people, lovers, mothers, factory workers, children. His compositions were delicate and balanced, often with a touch of lyricism. He didn't sensationalize his subjects. He honored them. His streets were alive with tenderness and daily poetry.
Manuel Álvarez Bravo, mostly active from the 30s to the 80s, was the visual soul of Mexico. His work straddled surrealism, symbolism, and street. He photographed religious icons, political murals, laborers, all with a meditative calm. His frames invite contemplation. He didn't imitate the West. He brought something distinctly Mexican to street photography. A poetic modernist with a political undercurrent.
Great. That wraps up our first section, the early legends who built the genre's bones.
Yeah, and it's wild that you can see even back then different philosophies in photography forming the genre, and there was a lot of confrontation, activism, humor, all coexisting in the same cities, the same decades.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna move on to the post-war and Magnum Era of our list that shaped street photography. Starting off with William Klein.
Yeah, he was mostly active from the 50s till the 1990s. He was even shooting in his wheelchair when his legs betrayed him in the end of his life.
Yeah, he
tore the rule book to shreds.
Yeah, blurred shots, wide angles, harsh flash. He made chaos look alive.
Yeah, his 1956 book Life is Good and Good for You in New York was like a slap in the face to traditionalists.
He shot cities like they were wild beasts, full of energy and contradiction. Klein didn't observe the street. He collided with it.
Yeah, he collided with it. And he also, he was one of the pioneers who used the street in combination with fashion photography.
Yeah.
For Vogue magazine. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very interesting what he did. He took the street philosophy.
And innovative.
Yeah, it was
then.
very innovative back then.
Robert Frank, mostly active from the 40s to the 2000s. Frank's The Americans tore through the glossy illusion of post-war America. His framing was loose, his moments of guitar like a jazz riff played out of tune, but perfectly so. He didn't want perfection, he wanted truth. There is melancholy in his gaze and a quiet defiance. He turned the road into a mirror. His work wasn't just about America, it was about alienation, freedom, and the flicker of something real between the cracks.
A fun fact is that while Frank was doing The Americans, he was detained by the police and he was thrown into jail for a few nights because they thought he was, a threat because he was a foreigner with a camera. That was crazy, right?
Yeah, and he faced a lot of US authorities.
Yeah, he got into trouble quite a few times. And is it true that he did The Americans with the help of the Guggenheim? He got a grant from the Guggenheim. Mm-hmm.
And I think he concluded it in 2 years, traveling the America. Moving on to Garry Winogrand. We all know Winogrand, mostly active from the 50s to the 80s. Winogrand was pure momentum. He shot like he was breathing, constantly, urgently, hungrily. His frames often feel tilted, unsettled, like the world was slipping out from under him.
Yeah, he documented the madness of post-war America, the gender dynamics, the optimism, the absurdity.
When he died, he left thousands of undeveloped furrows, proof he lived through the lens.
Okay, yeah.
And I know there is a really good documentary about Winogrand that shows him how he was shooting. Like he was spending one roll in like 10 meters.
Yeah.
He was like a shooter.
He was like
a gangster.
He was like the precursor of a digital photographer.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the same number of frames a digital photographer would shoot today, Garry Winogrand would shoot with film back in the day.
Yeah. And we should say he was also doing photojournalism a lot, except street photography. That also defined his work.
The next photographer, Diane Arbus. She was mostly active from the 50s to the early 70s. Diane Arbus went where few dared, and she stayed there. Her portraits of marginalized people, dwarfs, drag queens, circus performers were intense, sometimes disturbing, always respectful.
She didn't steal moments, she collaborated. Her work blurred the line between street and portrait, and she changed how we think about who's worthy of being photographed.
Which is your favorite photo from Arbus?
Maybe this one with the giant. I don't know. The twins.
The twins are good.
Yeah, they were in The Shining.
Yeah. Kubrick got inspired by that photo.
Exactly. I know. Yeah.
And my favorite one is Boy with Hand Grenade.
Oh yeah,
you remember that
awesome
one?
Too. Yes.
Yeah.
And she was friends with Winogrand.
Yeah, she was friends with Winogrand
and another photographer.
We're going to talk about now.
Friedlander.
Yeah.
Who was Friedlander was a visual puzzle master. Reflections, shadows, frames within frames. His photos are layered, tricky, brilliant.
He turned the city into a self-referential labyrinth, often including himself in the images. He made confusion look composed, and he proved that street photography didn't have to be dramatic. It could be intellectual, even sly. Indeed.
Yeah, and his famous work with the TVs.
Yeah.
It's not still photography, but
still it's very inspiring.
Yeah. Moving on to Elliott Erwitt. He died recently, the legend.
Huge.
Yeah. Erwitt saw humor in the everyday, dogs, lovers, politicians, kids. He photographed all of them with wit and elegance. His images are gentle but sharp, funny without being mean. He showed that laughter and tenderness are part of the streets too. And his composition? Always spot on. He made joy an art form.
One of my favorite street photographers ever, Tony Ray Jones, was mostly active in the 60s. He died young, unfortunately, but what he left behind became the blueprint for British street photography. He documented English social rituals with irony and warmth, seaside towns, parades, eccentric outfits. His work is funny, melancholic, and deeply British. You can feel Martin Parr's roots here. He saw the absurdity in structure and captured it beautifully. And Tony Ray Jones was heavily influenced by the New Yorker photographers, Winogrand, Arbus, Friedlander, because he spent some time in New York and he was photographing with them before he went back to Britain.
Yeah.
So he had a mixture of both these photographic cultures. That's why his work is so interesting.
Mary Ellen Mark, mostly active from the 1960s to the 2010s, lived with her subject, literally. She immersed herself in the lives of street kids, sex workers, mental patients. Her street work had depth, not just compositionally, but emotionally. She told difficult stories with grace and grit. Photography for her wasn't just about images, it was about justice and presence.
Bruce Davidson, mostly active from the 50s to the 2010s. Davidson went deep. He spent years with gang members, teenagers, civil rights activists, and subway riders. He didn't just drop in and take a shot, he earned the trust of the street. His work is honest, rich with nuance, and often heartbreaking. He gave the people he photographed space to be themselves.
One of his famous books, The Subway, Metro.
That's a very interesting story. I think you told me that he used to have a bodyguard with him.
No bodyguard. He had chains. He said it in his book. He had some chains to give to the people. He also was carrying a small knife with him in case something happened. Yeah, it was crazy. But he made some really famous photos, and one of my favorite ones is the one that he took from the metro of a graveyard that looks like the city.
I remember that one, yeah. Great project.
Great and dangerous. So after Davidson, we have Josef Koudelka, mostly active the same period as Davidson. Koudelka captured exile, not just geographically, but emotionally. His images of Roma communities and political unrest are handy, wide, and cinematic. He used wide-angle distortion like a weapon. Every photo feels like a question about identity, belonging, and loss. Street, maybe, but more like street with a mythic pulse.
Danny Lyon, mostly active from the 1960s to the 2000s. Lyon was embedded. He rode with bikers, marched with protesters, lived inside the stories he photographed. His street photography wasn't fly on the wall, it was face to face, shoulder to shoulder. He believed the camera was a tool for change. His grainy, emotional style still echoes in today's photojournalism.
Constantine Manos. Manos brought classical composition to modern life. His color street work, especially in American color, is painterly and precise. Every frame feels intentionally, every gesture measured. He was one of the early masters of color who used it not as a decoration, but as a narrative. A true visual craftsman.
Sergio Larrain, mostly active from the 50s to the 70s, was a mysterious genius. Larrain shot fleeting moments with haunting mood. Children running, shadows dancing, streets whispering. He disappeared from the photography world early, but his influence remains powerful. His eye was poetic, his compositions dreamlike. He made photography feel like memory, quiet but unforgettable.
Daido Moriyama, the chaos of Tokyo, raw, grainy, blurred. He walked the city like a fever dream. His high contrast, black and whites feel more like impressions than documents. He wasn't afraid of imperfection, he embraced it. He showed us that the street doesn't have to be clean. It can be wild and visceral.
Yeah, Daido's style influenced a lot of street photographers. And here in Greece as well, a lot of street photographers. That black and white, dark, grainy, blurry kind of style, I've seen it a lot.
With cameras that cost maybe $50 or
yeah.
50 euros.
Yeah. It's a very distinctive style.
And inspirational.
Yeah. Shomei Tomatsu. Tomatsu Street is heavy with history. From Nagasaki to Okinawa, he explored the psychological scars of post-war Japan. He mixed realism with abstraction, photojournalism with symbolism. His images are emotionally charged and politically urgent. The street in his work becomes a place of memory and reckoning.
Takuma Nakahira. Nakahira was radical. A founder of the Provoke movement, he believed in images that resisted interpretation.
Yeah, they were blurry, incoherent, aggressive. His photography was anti-authority, anti-aesthetic, anti-tradition. Street as confrontation. He challenged what it meant to photograph in public space.
Yeah, you can say he was a rebel with a lens.
Yeah, rebel with a lens, that's nice. That was a stacked section, right? We talked about photographers that inspired us through documentary, through surreal political movements, through intimate photography. We talked about a lot of photographers, and we still have so many more to present. But we're going to do that in another episode, the following episode. Yeah. And next time we're going to talk about the color explosion, and we're going to talk about the late 20th century photography with flash, with more dynamic things, coming into the scene. It's kind of when the genre started changing and it eased into what is happening now, which is something we're going to talk about in another video.
Episode. Okay.
Yeah. So until then, dear viewers, stay sharp and keep shooting.
See you in the streets.